Hey filmmakers, today we're going to take a look at an affordable wireless HDMI transmitter, and then I'm going to talk about a couple different ways that you can use something like this in your own video productions. This is a brand new transmitter from Hollyland and it's called the Mars 400. Now this is an upgrade from the Mars 300, and there are a couple things that set the Mars 400 apart from the previous edition. So let's talk about what I have set up right here. So to show you how the transmitter starts, just right off the bat, I have my Sony a7S set up and it's running into the Atomos Ninja via HDMI. And then I'm going HDMI out into the Mars 400, and that signal is being sent in real time over to the receiver, and the receiver then has an HDMI cable that's going directly into the HDMI in port on this little monitor. So why would you want to use a wireless transmitter like this? The number one main reason that I use a wireless transmitter on set is for pulling focus. So if you have someone that can wirelessly pull focus for you, it is a huge help to have something like this because they don't have to stand right by the camera. They can see what the camera is seeing on another monitor that's maybe a couple feet away or even a few hundred feet away, and they can pull focus for you and watch and see what's going on. And then you can just focus on framing and getting the right shot and getting the best shot with the camera, but you don't have to worry whether it's sharp and in focus or not. So that is a huge advantage to having wireless follow focus and wireless transmission. Now, if you're not using something like a wireless follow focus, this is also just awesome to have on set for your client. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll set up a director's monitor or a client monitor. So that way the client isn't hovering around the camera and trying to see what you're seeing. They have their own monitor that them and any other producers or important key figures in this shoot can stand around, usually a larger monitor, something like this, or even much bigger. You can hook it into a full-size television. So if you're not using it as a client monitor, you can also use it as a director's monitor because it's completely wireless and you can just walk around with it and be seeing what's going on in your shoot and be giving direction. I've talked about a few different ways that you can use a wireless transmitter. Now let's take a look at some of the actual specs and details on the Mars 400. So the wireless transmitter is actually a pretty simple device. On top, you've got two antennas that screw on and off. And then on the side, you have your HDMI in and out ports. So for the HDMI in, that's where your signal is either going to come directly from the camera and go in, or it's going to come out of a monitor or recorder and then go in. This one also has an additional loop out. So if you wanted to loop this out to another transmitter or another monitor right there, you could. There are two different ways that you can power the transmitter. You can either use standard Sony NPF batteries on the back, or you can plug it directly into DC power like I've done here. That way when you're on set, you don't have to worry about it ever running out of power. So besides those ports, the only other thing is this LCD screen on the front, which is actually really nice to have. The Mars 300, the previous edition, did not have an LCD. Now they've added it, so it's really easy to tell what channel you're on, if the signal's coming through, how the strength is, and the resolution. So I can see that I'm pushing 1080p at 24 frames per second. And then you have the ability to change the channel with these arrows. You can just arrow up and go through all the different channels. So if you're using multiple wireless transmitters, you can have them all set up without any interference. And this one has 8 channels, so you can set up a lot of transmitters. Now let's take a look at the receiver, and it's basically identical to the transmitter. The only way that you can really tell the difference is the marking on the side. It either says RX or TX. So this also has HDMI in and out ports, as the LCD screen on the front, a couple buttons to change the channels, and then of course you have your little on-off switch. And one thing I didn't mention that they both have is a port for upgrading. So it does have USB-C, so if you need to upgrade the firmware on this, if Hollyland comes out with some new firmware, you can plug it in easily there. Now, when it comes to mounting these transmitters, it really only has one mounting port, and that is a 1/4 20 thread on the bottom of it. So I do wish that they had a few mounting options on the bottom, maybe a couple 1/4 20s or a 3/8 inch one. That way, if this threading goes bad for some reason, you have other options available to you. Now, I know on some of their other transmitters, like the Cosmos 600 I have, it has 3 different threadings on the bottom, which is nice to have because I always know that if one goes bad, I have other options. Now, when it comes to build quality, these are very, very nice. I'm actually super impressed with the build quality. It's all a metal aluminum body, and it just feels super solid. I'm not worried about any parts or pieces on this breaking or cracking, anything like that. The only parts that are really made of plastic are the antennas, and that makes sense because the signal has to actually transmit through the plastic. One small thing that has happened to me a few times is one of these antennas has come unscrewed a little bit. And I don't know if I was just taking it in and out of the car or maybe hitting it on the gimbal or something, but it has become a little bit unscrewed before. So I wish that they made that lock into place a little bit. So it screws, and then I wish it kind of like locked or clicked into place, and you had to like press a release or something so you don't accidentally unscrew one of the antennas. But that's really only happened once or twice, has not been a major issue, just something to kind of nitpick at. Something to know about wireless transmitters is that they always get hot. Whether I'm using a Pterodactyl or the Cosmos 600 or the Mars 400, they just get hot. And the body of it, like I said earlier, is made of metal. So to the touch, they can get pretty warm. To combat that is they have these teeny tiny little vents on the side with a fan built in. So it helps cool it down and keep it from overheating. I've never had it overheat, and I've used this out in 110-degree weather here in Arizona. I live in the desert. It gets super hot, and I haven't had any issues with it overheating. Now, a concern that a lot of people have when they hear that something has an onboard fan, they worry that it's going to be really loud and get picked up by the microphone. But I'll tell you that this one is just a very quiet hum, and unless your microphone is directly next to it, it's really not going to get picked up. So that's what it sounds like with the microphone 1/2 inch away from the fan. Now, when it comes to the actual performance of the Mars 400, it's very good. So I used this all the way up to 400 feet, and the signal still was very strong and worked very well. So you know that you can get at least 400 feet away, which I still think is a crazy distance. There are very few times when I would need something like this that far away. The only time that I could really think when you need a transmitter that far away is if you're doing live events, which I have done and used transmitters like this before, and you need that range because when I'm walking around with a gimbal and I'm getting close up or walking around on the stage, a lot of times the receiver is all the way in the back of the room and then running into another computer and everything like that for doing live streaming, and you do need that amount of distance. There is a little bit of latency, but it's nothing crazy. You can see here me waving my hands and then it kind of moving there. I'll try and do a snap. You can see there is a split-second difference there, maybe a couple frames difference in latency, but it's not a crazy amount. It's still enough that someone could pull focus accurately. They might just be a few frames off. I've worked with a lot of wireless transmitters, and honestly, all of them have a little bit of latency. It's never lightning fast, perfect real time, so I think it's definitely acceptable. I definitely think that if you're on the market for a wireless HDMI transmitter, the Mars 400 is a great way to go. Hollyland also just came out with the Mars 400S, which has SDI in and out ports. So if you need those because your camera uses all SDI, that model would be perfect for you. And thanks to the guys over at Hollyland for sending this in for review. It's been a lot of fun to do. They did not pay me to say any of this, and these are all the opinions of my own. Hashtag not sponsored. And guys, if you want to learn how to light and shoot better videos, hit subscribe right now. I have a ton more videos coming out on lighting, shooting, editing, everything like that. And go check out the new merch. There are some really cool filmmaking shirts like an astronaut using a camera and an alien flying a drone. All right, I'll see you in the next video.